the team. It's definitely a privilege for me to have the opportunity to speak with all of you today. And I'm really looking forward to delivering these sessions on athlete career development over the next couple of days. And whatever stage you're at really in your athlete career, you know, whether it's early in your sporting career, or you're a dual career athlete, or you're actively transitioning out of sport, it's my hope that these sessions over the next 2 days will provide some useful tools and insights to support your careers beyond sport. So I thought before we get started, if we could all just do, this is the only interactive part of the session that I'm going to ask people to participate in, I promise. If we could all just briefly share in the chat box what your sport is, and whether you're either a full-time athlete, dual career, or recently retired, just like a tiny couple of bits of information to give me some context before we start. And I'll just give everyone a minute and 30 seconds to do that if you can. Who was the first one? We got boxer. A few more typing. Dual career. Lots of dual career today. Okay, we're a golfer as well. Great. Well, let's crack on from here then. So it looks like we've got a mix. We've got a couple of full-time athletes and many dual career athletes, some junior. We've got boxers, netball, curling, high jump, golf as well, which is interesting. So I thought we'd kick off by providing a little bit of context on my story and background before we actually start the sessions. So as Christy alluded to, I am a ex-badminton player where I represented Scotland. I was fortunate to be supported by the SIS for almost 10 years, actually, from the ages of 13 to 22. I retired back in 2013, where I moved to London, and I started a recruiting career where I spent 8 years helping to build a business. So that was 2 years in London, and I then had the opportunity to relocate back to Glasgow and build the Scottish division for a London-based company. The part of the business which I was responsible for working in and building placed hundreds of engineers and professionals per year in new careers in positions across Europe. We placed people in new roles in more than 10 countries and across numerous sectors, really. So that included tech, pharmaceutical, renewables, oil and gas, automotive, construction. And through those experiences, I guess was really fortunate to gain a wealth of knowledge and insights around how people typically successfully build careers. And it led me really to Athlete Origin. I wanted to build a business which focused on supporting a community or group of people which I was passionate about and I really resonated with. And for me, that was very much the sporting community. I'd seen firsthand so many cases of athletes often struggling to identify fulfilling careers beyond their sport. And more positively, I knew just how transferable the attributes of elite athletes are when you're thinking about how you can put them into other vocations and avenues. So our business, Athlete Origin, was founded in 2021. Our mission is to empower athletes to live successful and fulfilling lives beyond sport. And our service connects current and ex-athletes with careers across the technology sector. So this session today will be the first of a two-part series. So today we're focused on how to identify careers which align with you. And tomorrow will be on how to take practical steps towards the careers we're seeking. So today is much more about that career identification part and how to think about that and how to explore it. And tomorrow will be more practical in terms of steps we can take towards the careers that we're seeking. And the way we're going to do this today is provide a framework which you can all use individually, which supports you to self-identify careers. So it should take around 40 minutes, give or take. And then I want to leave lots of time for a Q&A at the end where people can ask me any and all questions about careers that they're thinking about, and we can go from there. Okay. So as you'll see, here is a basic career planning framework with 4 pillars. Before we get into the pillars, I wanted to explain why, in our view, it's useful to have a framework for career planning. My starting point here is, firstly, for many athletes, the last thing people want to think about is careers beyond sport. I'd certainly put myself in that camp many years ago when I was training and competing full time. And then when you do think about careers beyond sport, it can actually be really daunting. There is lots of potential careers, and people have many considerations around, what you would enjoy, what you would be good at, could I meet the entry requirements, what would the process look like to access these careers, and many athletes simply just don't know where to start, like what's an effective starting point in that process. So we find it really useful to massively simplify things and actually work from the basic framework that we see here. A consequence actually of not knowing where to start is evidenced pretty regularly in our daily work with athletes. So we interact with numerous ex-athletes typically who have, quote unquote, fallen into their careers either after or alongside sport, if they're dual career. Some people get lucky and they enter careers that suit them, but others unfortunately land or find themselves in jobs or careers that they find unfulfilling and they're seeking change. So in our experience, those who typically have fulfilling dual careers or transitions, they've typically been quite thoughtful in the years and months leading up to this. So they feel somewhat prepared and they have a sense of direction around future possibilities, which can actually turn a lot of the anxiety which athletes feel about life beyond sport or careers beyond sport into some excitement. So the framework we're using here is actually based on a framework used by an organisation called Skills Development Scotland. That's our national public career service. It's not an exact science. Career planning never is, to be honest, but we can use this framework to ensure that athletes feel empowered and better prepared for that next step in your career journey. So we take a look at the slide now. You'll see that it's comprised of 4 sections. So the first section is how you want your life to look in the context of a career. The second section is exploring your strengths. So how do we identify, think about, uncover, and explore those strengths? The third section is focused on researching opportunities. So once we've explored that life in context of career and exploring strengths, how do we then research opportunities that could play to these? And then the fourth section is all about building and leveraging networks. So we're going to explore each of these sections, what they mean, and how you can use them to practically self-identify careers. And we'll do this by providing reflective questions for you to ask yourselves in your own time. And as you'll imagine, the answers to these questions will be very different for different people. And then the final part of today's presentation is going to actually look at a case study of a fictional athlete who's been through this process and used this framework as an illustration to show how we can put this framework into practice. Okay. So let's get started. Life in the context of career. So the first step really in our career planning framework is looking at life in the context of our career. So I think initially I'll explain why we're starting here. So whether you compete in professional sport, or if you're dual careering, or if you are looking at careers for after sport, our career always forms, if we're honest, a real key part of our identity, how we identify with ourselves. And more practically, it's something that we dedicate large chunks of our lives to. And this section helps us to explore what you really want from a career and how you want your career to fit into your broader life. And once you have a sense of this and a sense of how you want this lifestyle to look, and some of the things which are important to you, it can act as a filter for the varying demands of different careers. So it's really foundational for career research, and you can use this as a filter. So when you're reflecting at this stage, you might want to start thinking about the following. So the first question to really ask yourself is, regardless of the job role, the job title, what's important for you to give? So for me, really, this means, what might you enjoy doing? So if we think of some hypothetical examples here of what some people enjoy doing or are good at, you could think of things like, do you enjoy working with numbers, right? Do you have a creative side that you'd like to explore? Are you an analytical person who loves solving problems? Are you a relationship builder who loves connecting with people? Maybe you're someone who's energized by supporting others and seeing them thrive and develop. And that's just a few examples, and it's probably a combination of many. For most people, it's a combination of a number of factors. So it's what might you actually practically enjoy doing? And when you ask yourself this question in your own time, write some of these things down. Think about how important they are for you in a job or career, and then start to prioritize them. So what's important for you to give? The next question really is, what's important for you to get back? So by this, I mean, what do you need a career or job to offer you? What do you need a career or job to offer you? And for this question, I'd encourage you to think short and medium term, because for many careers, what you get back by some measures doesn't happen in the first couple of years. But there's lots of, sub-questions to ask yourself and things to reflect on under this one. So one could be, do you want to work in a close team environment in an office each day? Okay. Or do you want to work in a role where you spend large chunks of time working by yourself? If you, for example, currently spend your days in group training sessions, think about whether you'd be happy or comfortable moving from those group training sessions to one where you're working from home alone. Okay, different jobs have different working environments and different levels of team collaboration on a daily and weekly basis. It's an important consideration for everyone. Another example when thinking about what's important for you to get back is how important are financial rewards in the context of the lifestyle that you want to live. Okay, so big financial rewards are really important for some people and a lot less important for others. But it's important to know this about yourself because pay structures vary across different jobs and different sectors. A third one here could be, what about the opportunity to progress to leadership positions? Okay, so that's a medium-term thing. It's never immediate, but some careers have fast career progression tracks based on merit alone versus time served. So I can actually think of my career path in recruiting here, which definitely offered this, versus a more traditional pathway like, let's use law, for example, for argument's sake, where there's still an element of time served versus merit alone when thinking about that fast career progression track. Or maybe it's a career that offers flexible working. So maybe that's something that's important. Maybe it's great holiday entitlements and flexibility to pursue other passions. So that's the first two steps, really. It's like, what's important for you to give? So what would you enjoy doing? And what's important for you to get back? What do you need that career or job to offer you? And the final question here is reflecting on how your potential career choices will impact the other areas of our lives. Okay, so let's think about some questions to ask ourselves here. What's the work schedule in these careers? Okay, maybe you are highly financially driven and you want to work in, for argument's sake, investment banking. You need to ask yourself if you're willing to work 80-hour weeks, or will that clash with the lifestyle that you want to live? Will it force you to sacrifice other passions which are equally important to you? Maybe it's commute times for a career. Maybe you're dual careering, as many of you here clearly on this call are. And how would long daily commutes to work impact your training and competing? Okay, so that's another thing. How may the choices I make impact other people in my life, right? So maybe it impacts quality time with people close to you, family, friends, spouses. So that's another important consideration when thinking about those choices and how they can impact broadly other areas of our lives. And what other passions do we want to dedicate time for? So essentially in this pillar, which is pretty foundational to that identifying careers which align with you, you're really exploring what type of work, family, and leisure activities might contribute to your version of that happy and balanced life. And there's a bunch of questions within there to look at, but that's our foundation and that's our starting point. Okay, so once we've laid our foundations of life in the context of career, we can easily move on to pillar 2, which is all around exploring our strengths. This is exploring really, what am I good at? What attributes do I have? How can I leverage them for a career beyond sport? So you're all elite sports people, clearly, but it might surprise you just how many elite athletes that we have calls with and I have calls with daily who really struggle to identify their strengths. But the benefit clearly of successfully doing so is it means you can really start to identify careers and jobs which play to these strengths. And it actually has a further benefit down the line when thinking about writing CVs or LinkedIn profiles or interviews and such. So there's a few sub-points in here. The first one for me is, what attributes do I have? And by attributes, just to be clear, I'm talking about qualities or characteristics that you might naturally have. So not learned skills, but qualities or characteristics that you might naturally have. So examples here could be, maybe you are a creative person, Maybe you are highly disciplined. I'm sure you're all highly committed. Maybe you're very tenacious. Maybe you're naturally curious. Maybe you're very outgoing. And what examples from our lives demonstrate these? So when we think about strengths, what attributes do we have? What natural characteristics do we have that are qualities, that are strengths, that are advantages? And then when we think about strengths, it's what skills do we have? And for me, this is essentially learned behaviors. So attributes are those natural characteristics and skills are those learned behaviors. So what do we have here? Are we, for example, strong at writing, excellent at problem solving? Are we good at design? Do we have good IT skills? Are we excellent with numbers, maybe excellent numeracy? Do we have excellent organization skills? Are we an eloquent speaker who can do public speaking and can speak at public events? So what learned skills do we have that we could also consider strengths? And then we have experiences and achievements. So what experiences or achievements do we have which demonstrate the above or might help you to uncover attributes or skills that you didn't know you had? Okay. So let's take an example here, which I'm sure you can all relate to. So if everyone thinks of a time where you were competing in a match or a competition and you came back to win against the odds, right? So I'm sure you'll all have several examples. And I'm also sure you've probably displayed perseverance and resilience to get the win, okay? But you've probably demonstrated much more and you've not really thought about it perhaps. So maybe it was problem solving to deal with a tricky opponent, or creativity to adapt your playing style to manage an injury you've been carrying. So examples like these can really help to uncover strengths that A, you didn't know you had, and B, help you to get examples to help you with the job search further down the line, thinking about interviews and things like that. Another easy link into something like strengths could be organization, for example, which I'm sure you can all demonstrate by discussing how you combine training, competing, studying, and working, for example. But what do we do if we feel we struggle to self-identify strengths? The first thing I'll say to this is it's pretty normal, right? So a lot of people find this challenging, and it's not the easiest thing in the world to just think, okay, what are my strengths? They'll all come off the top of my head and I'll just write them down. So there's plenty of resources we can actually look at to support in this regard. The first thing you can do is seek feedback and draw on the insights of others. So think about coaches, teammates, friends, families, partners, the people closest to us. They often know us, they know our blind spots, including strengths that we might not always recognize in ourselves. So seeking feedback and drawing on the insights of others. And another option, or your second option here, is to speak with a professional, okay? So your first one, clearly, you have your PL practitioners in the SIS. You have professional career coaches. Actually, at the organisation, Skills Development Scotland, I was talking about, that's a free career service for anyone across Scotland, supporting people at all ages and careers and different stages of their careers. You could also speak with various paid-for services. You have private career coaches, business coaches, life coaches, and there's plenty of professional resources out there based on whatever your needs and wants are. So speaking with a professional is super useful. And then finally, it's making use of online tools or psychometrics to gain personal insights. So these, for those who maybe aren't fully aware of what these are, They're basically online quizzes which ask you multiple choice questions, and based on your answers, will give you a detailed profile of some of your strengths or career interests or things like that. So I've actually linked in the slide here a free one, which is reputable, which is specifically focused on career interests. So that's the Myers-Briggs Strong Interest Inventory, which people can try out and help that with their strengths and career interests. Okay. Once we've done the work to identify some of our strengths, you're going to see that they most likely transfer to several careers. So I'll give you an example here. The athletes that we place professionally or that we support professionally in our work into commercial careers in tech, they typically display numerous transferable qualities, right? So they are typically tenacious, they're curious, they're organized, they're coachable, they are great communicators. But when you really think about that, you could put those attributes into lots of different career paths. Maybe you've identified, or you will identify over time, that you have a lot of patience, you are creative, you have a passion for learning, you have a passion for developing others and seeing them succeed. So then an obvious thought could be a teaching pathway. That could be really fulfilling for you. But equally, some form of coaching career could be really well suited. Or there's various options within that. So to summarize so far, if we were working from this framework, you've taken essentially two foundational steps. You've explored how you want your life to look in the context of your career, and you've identified some key strengths. And the next step after you've done these is to get into the detail of specific career research, and you're using the first two steps as a filter for that research. You're using the research you've done in the first two steps, or the knowledge you've gained from the first two steps, as a filter. Okay. And this takes us to researching opportunities. So the third step in our framework is about exploration of opportunities. The goal here of career exploration is basically to perform due diligence, so research, to learn more about your choices or your options, and then narrow down your choices to a career path that fits you best, or pathways that might fit you best. So what's the first step here? Well, the first thing to think about is knowing where and how to access reliable career information. So it's basically where to research, what to look at. There's lots of options here. So for me, firstly, it's always worth looking at traditional online research. You can read up on job descriptions, average salaries, and you can look at them, by the way, and from a starting salary perspective to the medium and long term, job outlook, required education and training, daily tasks and what the day-to-day of a job looks like. But in addition to that sort of basic online research, I think we should all remember that there's podcasts, webinars, YouTube clips, all with insightful career information across pretty much any career. So my suggestion here in terms of that research side is that we do all of it, we do as much as we can, but a good one area to focus on is to actually think about consuming information that suits your learning style. So if you enjoy listening to podcasts and you feel you learn that way, try and go on Spotify and find podcasts about whatever careers that interest you, how to gain access into a marketing career or a finance career or whatever that pathway is that's interesting for you. And then from this research, you can make a list of your top choices and be pretty informed on paper about the jobs that seem potentially a good fit for you. And then at this stage, after we've explored, again, that life in the context of career, our strengths, and we've conducted some career research, I view it as quite useful to challenge and consider those aspirations and goals. So essentially challenge any initial assumptions from before you started this exploration. So for example, thinking about things like, were you or are you limiting yourself by considering careers that you had prior insights into? You know, I've only considered careers that I have prior insights into, like careers in sport, for example, in the sporting world. And could you expand your research beyond this now? Or another example could be, does your aspiration hold up against the journey required to get there? Maybe you want to become a lawyer or a doctor, but now you're educated on the steps required to gain entry and what the career looks like. Are you actually willing to do the necessary qualifications and make that investment and put in that time? And is that going to fit into the life that you want? Now you've done the homework. So I just think at this point, you'll have done a lot of research, you'll have explored your strengths. Let's reconsider, let's challenge, and let's assess whether that's the right path. And then the third step here really is looking at industry insights. And by this, I mean researching and deep diving into certain sectors or industries. And I think that's really useful for a few reasons. Firstly, by reading into potential sectors, you'll discover that some simply interest you more than others, okay? Some might compel you to keep learning and keep reading or keep watching or listening. And others you'll just find less interesting and you might just slowly back away from. It's a great indicator, so that's a clear benefit. The second reason to look at industry insights is probably more of a long-term view. It's about developing a sense of future opportunities and risks in these industries and how they may impact positively or negatively long-term career prospects. So, for example, what sectors or industries have positive job creation outlook, and what sectors or industries may be high job risk in terms of some jobs becoming less, some jobs being automated away, for example, and that type of thing. If you want to deep dive into any of those things around that bigger picture or industries, there's actually an annual publication by the World Economic Forum, which is called the Future of Jobs Report. And it's a free publication, free to download online, and it comes out every year. And it is a bit of a heavy read, but it's informative if you want to deep dive into the kind of bigger picture of job creation outlook, and can be informative for some people. So that's it's the Future of Jobs Report by the World Economic Forum. And then finally, it might sound like a bit of a basic one, but it's looking at the need for upskilling or retraining. So that obviously varies widely between roles and sectors. The important thing here is that you understand the steps needed to upskill or retrain or educate yourself, if any, and then assess whether you're willing to make that commitment. And once you've completed these steps, you'll now be armed with lots of information about careers which potentially interest you or otherwise. And now we're building networks, which is the final pillar in our career planning framework. This is an area where some people are definitely, in my experience anyway, some people are more comfortable than others, but equally where the activities can be hugely impactful. Establishing, building, leveraging networks can be insightful from a career exploration perspective, and also for opportunity identification, so identifying actual job opportunities when you get that far. The benefits really of just having a conversation with someone who is in a career that you're interested in learning about is in many ways as powerful as all the internet research you can do. It shouldn't replace it, but it's definitely an important element. Just that first-hand conversation, that first-hand knowledge, that research. And you can get insights into the good, the bad, the opportunities, the challenges, and really get a full picture. So basically two ways to do this. The first way of exploring this is looking at relationships we have. This is, who do we already know that could prove insightful to our career research? Could this be friends, family, coaches, sponsors, even old teammates? Who do we know in our network that are in careers that we've defined as interesting for us? And how can we reach out to them and speak to them? And then it's relationships which we can initiate or develop. So a good starting point here is potentially making contact with people who you have a mutual connection with already. And then failing that is the basics of reaching out to people cold. It can be companies, it can be experienced professionals in the careers that you're interested in. It could be ex-athletes who are in a career, in which you're interested in learning about. Tomorrow's session will focus much more in how to do some of those things effectively and some of the practical elements of it. But these are just things to think about initially. And sort of my closing thoughts on network building is sort of through experience, I've learned that people are generally very happy to give insights and advice. The ex-elite athlete community is especially helpful in this regard with other athletes. Many are looking for ways to get back. We often have ex-athletes offering mentoring calls to current athletes who are interested in exploring the career path that they are in. So if you feel you could benefit from some of those direct conversations, but maybe you're hesitant to reach out to people because you're unsure if it's appropriate to ask or nervous about how well you'll be received, my advice is just go for it. People typically receive you very, very well, and people typically want to help. And the final section today is an example of our framework in action. Okay, so it's a made-up hypothetical, but it might help you visualize how using this type of framework could work if you try it for yourself at some point in the future. Okay, so let's go through it. So here we have George. He is a professional rugby player. And the context of him is that he's moving from full-time professional to a dual career athlete competing in the English Championship. Okay. Right. So first step, life in the context of career. What does he want to give? So again, what's that is, what might he enjoy doing? What does he enjoy doing in his life? Well, he's a creative thinker. He's always curious about new approaches of doing things. He has an eye for design and enjoys drawing and sketching in his spare time. And he loves socializing and building relationships and networks with people. Then it's about, what does he want to get? So again, what does he want a job or career to give him? What does he want a job or career to give him? Well, he wants a variety of daily tasks to use that creativity. He wants a work-life balance, which leaves room for passions outside of work. But he is ambitious. He wants that opportunity to progress his career in the future based on merit. And that final point there relates to that competitive and driven sporting nature that he has. And he knows that, especially for when maybe the time comes where rugby's finishing his life, he wants a vehicle for that drive and that competitive nature. And then the final point is, how might these choices impact the other areas of his life? So he's conscious of time and energy commitments, of combining semi-pro rugby with work. So he's training 3 nights a week in the evenings and playing matches at the weekends. So this automatically filters out some careers which require very long working hours. He's got a partner who's originally from Spain, and they may consider relocating in the future. And on that basis, he'd love a sector which is quite pro-remote working. So that's a life in the context of his career. Let's go to strengths. So, like many, George struggled to self-identify strengths without a bit of a deep dive, but he analysed examples of his key achievements. He spoke with those close to him, coaches, partners, friends, and with the help of the Myers-Briggs questionnaire, he was able to uncover the following. So he is creative, he's naturally curious, he's got excellent communication skills, and he's incredibly tenacious. That's us got life in the context of career and strengths. And it moves on to opportunities. So he used the insights he gained from the first two to start researching careers. And we looked at 5 options, okay? So he looked at graphic design, sales, management consulting, investment banking, and marketing. And from this, a few were filtered out, right? So graphic design was filtered out because he wanted a career which was more of a direct vehicle for his competitive nature. Investment banking was filtered out because of the extreme working hours. And management consulting was filtered out because it required additional educational qualifications, which he decided just weren't for him at this time. So that's then left him with marketing and sales, which were potentially well aligned as playing to his strengths and fitting with life in the context of his career. So as a final step, what did we do? He went to his networks. George reached out to a rugby drinks company sponsor to explore marketing because he knew that they employed a bunch of people in marketing in their organization, in their company. And he also reached out to an old rugby contact who was successful in sales. Both provided insights, and the marketing contact led to a 1-week internship in the off season. And based on the creativity of the role and the opportunities to work remotely one day, based on his personal circumstances, he decided that was the pathway that he was going to try and he was going to pursue. So, of course, that's a hypothetical and it's made up, but hopefully it just helps you to visualize how you could start putting a framework like that into practice in your own time for yourself. And then just some final thoughts. Identifying careers which are suited to you is never an exact science. There's no one shoe fits all approach to it. Hence why there's professional careers advisors and all sorts of professionals helping in this area. But by taking steps at least similar to those above, you're making informed decisions, and based on these informed decisions, you're increasing your chances of entering careers beyond sport, which are fundamentally going to be right for you. And a final point on that then relates to action, which teases up quite nicely before tomorrow's session. Once you've done the homework on careers, assuming it's the right time in your sporting journey and so forth, it really is then vital to take action and try something, even if you don't feel 100% sure. Overthinking and trying to make perfect career choices can really easily lead to decision paralysis. And that, in my experience, can be much, much worse than trying a career, trying a role, trying an internship, trying a course, discovering it's not for you, and then course correcting. Because with the latter, you've learned something and you've made some progress. So that's sort of my final message. Many thanks. I appreciate everyone's time in the presentation today. And tomorrow's session will be focused on taking active steps towards the pathways we're seeking. Thanks. And now we can go into questions.
I was just going to open it up to everyone. Thanks so much, Angus. Folks, if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to either just put your hand up or take yourself off mute, or if you want to stick it in the chat box. I know someone messaged me, thanks Scott, to say that a couple of you couldn't use the chat box, so that's maybe why we had a few people not send in their sport and what career they were doing. But yeah, and also as well, if you have any questions when you go away and do a bit of reflection, then please do let us know. You can send it to myself or your respective PL member of the team who you work with, and we'll make sure that we get an answer for you from Angus. Anyone got any questions? I don't think
tomorrow?
we do.
Something about tomorrow.
That's no problem, Ben. We'll make sure that the recording gets to you. Not to worry. Thank you. Okay, doke. I think if there's no questions at the moment, if you've got any, please do send them on, and look forward to seeing the majority of you tomorrow in the evening session as well. Okay, doke. I'll stop recording now as well.
I think someone's typing.